they were all just vying for power. It was almost like they were kind of hardly people a bit. They were very much people, but they were very much obsessed with trying to fill the power void.
That is just strictly a survival at any cost. And when you come back to it, we're all savages. Really, there's been no evolution.
Hi, welcome to The Real Generation Gap. I'm BJ Kang, and this is Fred Sottile. And today we're reviewing The Death of Stalin, a historical fictionalization of the death of the USSR leader and the chaos to fill the power void that follows.
You know, I watched this movie, and politics in a Politburo, it's a real clown show, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the reasons why I suggested this movie was because I was really impressed with the way that they were able to portray the sort of power grab, and a pretty traumatic one at that, but derive like some pretty natural and pretty hilarious moments from it.
You know, I got to wonder what's going to happen when Soros dies. Imagine the power vacuum there.
Yeah.
I know he has a son, but you know, the sons of these guys are always inept, right?
Yeah.
And you just know that when he goes, there's already a vast amount of politicians, lawyers, accountants that are going to all want some chunk of that, right?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see that chaos, that clown show. Just a thought.
Yeah. And that's what makes this film funny to me, in my opinion. It's like, it's hard when you think of the USSR as funny, as if there's any comedy that comes from it. Like, let's be honest, that starvation, more than what, like tens, hundreds of million people dead from
starving, freezing, no medical care.
Yeah.
Right? Circumstances of pure hopelessness.
Mass imprisonment,
That's
mass
what
persecution.
I call funny. Yeah. And so who to get to work on it? Michael Palin, right? After Life of Brian, the nail Jesus to the cross. It must have been really living hell, but you did recommend this movie because it is funny, and I did laugh at times, but...
After we did the review on The Road to Wellville, I thought the movie was funny. However, The Road to Wellville is based on like true historical events, and there's true people that lived that. And I felt that the comedy was a little unbalanced in The Road to Wellville, and so it was my idea to suggest this one, where I thought that the comedy was naturally derived, but, you know, definitely takes front center, but doesn't overshadow the seriousness of what's going on during this time. I mean, this is the USSR, for crying out loud.
So you like balanced comedy when it comes to genocidal politburos? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah? Did you find the film was, like, insensitive in any way, or...?
These young people, it's always, I was offended, you know. No, there was no racism. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys, they're trying to search for their position now in a regime that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So you're going to be the boss? Am I going to be the boss? Am I going to work for him? Is he going to work for me? We got to kill a couple of these people. Somebody got to, you know, what happens? What do we do with Stalin's psychotic daughter and his alcoholic son? We got to deal with them somehow. Yeah. And they were funny characters.
Yeah, they were.
They were. I mean, I did laugh. But holy smokes.
To be honest, you're right. It's Death of Stalin. There's not like anything I would say that's like gut busting, you know, laughing funny, but it's a sort of dry situational humor that comes from the absurdity of like a hyper bureaucratic government like that with all the paranoia and power plays going on. It's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, they even had that scene where the train was on time, right? Yeah. It was like, how come the train is here? It's supposed to come here now. It's on time, you know. The one thing that they did, right? They made the trains run on time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a funny movie based on a horrifically serious, you know, you wouldn't think that this would be made, but, you know, you got to find funny stuff in these. And Michael Palin, he was a king of satire. I mean, the Monty Python was hilarious, and then he made other movies that were like that. I liken this very much to Life of Brian. You know, Life of Brian was in a horrible time. The Romans were oppressing the Israelis in their homeland. People. Yeah, crucifying people. And here was a guy who just, nothing made sense to him. Everybody was wacky. The Romans were wacky. The Jews were wacky. His circumstances were wacky. The fact that he ended up being nailed to the cross at the end was, you know, he took it in stride. So, yeah, Michael Palin's, he must, in his own life, he must have a very sarcastic view of politics and history.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that history is written by
the victors.
Well, that's the cliche, but it's written by people who really don't know everything that happened.
Yeah.
They just write down what they think. I mean, I've made many attempts to read the Gulag Archipelago, and it's a huge piece. It's, in my opinion, impossible to read. It's regarded as a literary masterpiece, but that was a guy who, he lived through this horrible event, and he really made a historic account of it. So things like this had a lot of accurate historical things.
Yes.
All the people, Khrushchev really was there, and that kind of thing. But I love Jeffrey Tambor's character. Was it Malenkov? Malikov.
Malenkov.
Malenkov, yeah. He was trying to do the right thing by everybody.
Yeah.
Buscemi was trying to survive the thing and remain in power. He recognized the power vacuum.
Yeah.
And in real life, Khrushchev did become the premier, right? So a lot of things were good. I loved the scenes in the Kremlin. I don't know if that was actually the Kremlin, but just some of those floors and ceilings and, the buildings themselves were pretty spectacular.
Those parts were pretty amazing. The set pieces and the costume design. I really love that the subtle distinction between the Red Army and the NKVD. There's a very subtle distinction of the blue accents on the uniforms versus the Red Army's red accents.
Right.
Yeah. So
everybody was into armbands back then, weren't they? That was a real thing. The Nazis had them,
Yeah. But there was a real lot of care put into like reinforcing the environment that they were in, this is the USSR, but we're in the Politburo building, and they're in the grand halls of, Moscow, and there's a lot of, bureaucratic nonsense going on in those behind those walls.
It was really chaotic. And when you have an individual who's in power, look what happened in Cuba with Fidel, right? When he died, same thing, power vacuum. They don't really, in any of those structures, there's never really a chain of transition. It's always when that guy dies, it just becomes a big power grab.
Yeah.
It's just a period of madness, and that period of madness was portrayed real well in the movie in a funny way.
Yeah.
But you got to know in real life, these guys all wanted to kill each other.
Yeah. That's what I really liked about this film. It was a really good balance. And Simon Russell Beale, who plays Beria, he was probably the most ruthless out of all of these characters, and was probably the most ruthless out of all of the Central Committee that was going on in the USSR at the time. I mean, the acts that you see him do in the movie are actually, they were worse in real life.
Obviously worse in real life.
Yeah.
But he was a ruthless guy.
Yeah.
He didn't care what happened to anybody as long as he retained power.
Yeah.
And he was unable to do it.
Yeah.
So
he was outmaneuvered
outmaneuvered by the funny guy, by the court jester. Yeah.
That's why I thought Buscemi was a perfect actor to put in Khrushchev's shoes for this movie. Khrushchev historically in order to survive in Stalin's inner circle, he was the funny guy. He knew that the best way to survive and to not, be ousted from his inner circle or to have Stalin be paranoid against him was to be the one guy who made him laugh the most. And that scene where Khrushchev goes back and has his wife write down what jokes that Stalin liked and which ones he didn't. That's a real thing that happened. And if you want a versatile actor to play a man who has two different faces trying to survive in this paranoid, crazy man's committee, you get Buscemi. You get Steve Buscemi to do it.
He really did do a great
Yeah,
job,
he
too.
did.
He did. It was funny because he had that bald head wig thing on, and it looked so goofy. He looked like one of the Coneheads.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Hollywood can do that.
Yeah.
But they do. So I thought it was a good recommendation. I enjoyed watching it, even though it was a little silly for me. And I'm silly. I'll watch a silly movie or something, but just because it's such a dark place and such a dark time and such a dark history and everything there, everything to do with Soviet Russia was just so unfair. I mean, they just genocidally destroyed the population and other populations. I mean, they didn't care if they starved the whole country or anything. So, it's like making jokes about the Holocaust. It's just like always in bad taste,
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell any Holocaust jokes, much as I'm, compelled to. But I'm so focused on the horror of world events even now.
Yeah.
One of the things that came to mind and came up in conversation was China has this going on right now.
Yeah.
Xi, he's a singular dictator. For him to remain in power, he has to suppress all opposition, whether it's from the tiniest people to other oligarchs, Chinese oligarchs, industrialists, anything like that. He has got to remain iron-fisted in power, and he's doing a good job of it.
Yeah.
But it's 2024 now. We still have the same format. We have the same paradigm. It's you want to come to power, you want to hold power, you have an oligarchy that brings you to that apex. And then after that, it's just strictly a survival at any cost.
Yeah.
And it's barbaric. I mean, when you come back to it, we're all savages. It's just Attila the Hun in 2024.
Yeah.
It's really, there's been no evolution. When this, all this violence started in Israel recently, and then just before that, when it started in the Ukraine, I couldn't believe that in this day and age, that we're going to have an armed conflict, really an armed and the world is going to watch this. You would have thought that the UN would have shut this down immediately.
Yeah.
They would have, some vast amount of people that all agreed, a giant consensus of world leaders would have gone to Russia and said, Vladimir, you have to stop killing people. Zelensky, you have to stop running a corrupt government where you're a banker for the American president and you're doing all this between the genocidal chemistry labs, the medical stuff that's going on and all the money laundering and everything. You would think that there would be an adult in the room at last, but it's not. This movie, all of these guys were wacky kids.
Yeah.
They were kids that grew up and got big and fat, but they were still having a schoolyard battle. Now, you mentioned this, so I'm going to bring it up.
Okay.
This is a great thing that you said that made me laugh is, when is too many medals too many? How many medals is too many? Look at these guys. Could you imagine a grown adult dressing like that? It's worse than the Pope.
Here's a fun fact. That character right there, who I believe is Zhukov, who is the
Right.
field marshal,
Yes.
he had more medals in real life. They actually had to tone back on the amount of medals that they put on him in this movie because that would have been too cartoonish. But he had more medals in real life than he actually does in this movie.
How many possible battles or campaigns could you be involved in that you need to be decorated to that degree? You see it even in our own government. You see these guys come before Congress. They got this great big fruit salad bar, right?
Yeah.
All these things. And it's interesting to me that even though you've got all those things, what did you improve? Why are we a better world because you did that one? I think that one's for the Royal Auto Club. He got that when he bought an MGB. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just ludicrous. The stuff on the shoulders, the epaulets and everything. Look at the coat this guy's wearing. How much money was that?
To be fair, this was the general. This was the deputy marshal who beat Hitler. He was the leader. He was one of the leaders of the Red Army during World War II. So,
well, that's good. That's good. That's a whole nother can of worms, right? Our allies, the Russians.
yeah.
To defeat Hitler. Wow, we could talk about that. That's the whole rest of the, till the sun goes down and we're out in the parking lot. But look at that with the scar on his face.
Yeah.
He looks like a genuine badass.
He really was.
He kind of looks like Putin. I mean, look at that,
The actor was Jason Isaacs. He's a very popular British actor. And I thought, for specifically Zhukov, I thought he did a great job at capturing sort of not so much the historical figure of who he was, but like the legendary figure of who he was. I mean, there's a scene where Steve Buscemi cuts into his discussion that he's having with other partygoers, and he goes, and Zhukov then put the banner on Hitler's bunker and then punched out a bear. The legendary stories about Zhukov was like that. And it paid credence to history too. In order to, basically stage a coup like what they did in the movie, they needed Zhukov's help because he was a beloved hero in the Soviet Union.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you're larger than life, you have the correct place.
Yeah.
You're correct to be there and dress the part. Every girl's crazy about a sharp-dressed man, right? So I enjoyed the movie. I'm glad you recommended it. I might have not watched it otherwise, and that's this whole real generation gap thing, right? Is to turn you on to stuff and for you to turn me on to stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me about the ones you liked.
Like I said, Simon Russell Beale, who played Beria, the one all the way there on the right.
On the right, yeah. Yeah, just a monster.
Yeah. So
the homicidal lunatic.
I thought he did a terrific job because Beria was ruthless and brutal and cold and a monster in real life, and he did such a good job of playing someone so slimy, so cruel, but also such a manipulator and such a schemer.
You know who I'll give credit to? Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Tambor. He played the part of the guy who was supposed to take over. And he had the best interest of the world at heart. He had the Russian people's interest at heart. And even though he had all these good qualities, nobody liked him or took him seriously because they all wanted to fight their way to the top. And he was like, I'm the second in command. According to our Constitution, I'm the one that takes over. And now I have to correct everything and make everything right according to the policies that were set in place. And everybody else was like, "To hell with the policies. We're just gonna fight that this is a cage match."
Yeah.
So I like Jeffrey Tambor anyway.
He definitely played. He was a puppet, like in that movie, completely.
Right. Even though he was the one who was right in the whole group.
Yeah.
He was the one that really didn't have any power and didn't struggle for power. So I liked him and his part. There's Jeffrey Tambor on the left. You know, that's a perfect picture of him. Look how disappointed, and sad, and dejected. You know, and he's facing these guys who just want to murder him.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree that the Death of Stalin is, I would say, when it comes to its humor, it's a bit more, maybe a little reserved. I described it as dry and situational, not innovative. I'll give you that much for sure. But I thought it did a really good job of deriving humor from. I was impressed with how much it derived humor from what was such a grim and oppressive regime. I thought, trying to find something funny out of that at all would be impossible.
Well, what you find funny, they had a scene where they had people on their knees and they were shooting them in the back of the head, execution style, and then something happened that distracted them, and they just left all the guys standing on their knees, and they just went off, and the guy who was next to be shot was like, where is everybody? Eventually they just walked away. Yeah. I could see something like that happening in real life. It's like when the police pull a guy over, and then all of a sudden they get like, the homicidal lunatic is, right down, and they just drive better, and they get back in their car and drive while you're standing there like, where's my ticket?
That's situational humor right there.
Yeah.
One of the scenes that I really liked that stood out to me, that really captured the sort of the nonsense, the comedy from the political games, was when Stalin's truck is taking off from his manor, and Beria gets out first to lower his hat down, right? So he looks more respectful than the other members, and so they all quickly follow, and then he immediately is the first one to run back to his car, so he's the first one to sort of follow the thing. And it was that was hilarious to me, because they all just start scrambling back to their cars, and Steve Buscemi character goes, I was like, what are we, last now? Because he ends up last in line. Right. And he was the first one at the front.
And that was like teenagers with hot rods.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It showed like it was a juvenile Animal House moment. It was like, we got to get in line. Everybody, oh my God, and they all almost crashed into each other. Like they all converged at once. Mm-hmm. And no, it was like a scene out of Mad World or something. God, how could that happen with adults in a situation like that?
I mean, they were all just vying for power. And, it was almost like they were kind of hardly people a bit. They were very much people, but they were very much obsessed with trying to fill the power void.
Not only were they vying to have power, but they were also trying to make sure that they weren't killed by somebody else who was vying for power. What an awful situation.
That's why I thought it was really interesting where you said like it felt like there was no real villains in this movie, when Beria was clearly, I think, to me,
he was the villain.
He was the biggest threat.
Yeah. But you know what? I didn't take him seriously from the beginning. I knew he wouldn't end up doing well,
Yeah.
Because usually somebody that's real intense like that is rejected by the group.
Yeah.
So, and they really rejected him well, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So,
what did you think of the trial scene that they had at the very end, where they take him out to like a sort of?
Yeah, that to me was historically accurate.
Yeah.
It's like, we have charges. We found you guilty. We're going to execute you now. We're going to, it's like, do I get to say anything? No.
That was definitely one of the most dramatic parts of the movie right there, and that was one of the movies where it was just the most somber. A lot of the comedy. There was no comedy in that scene to me, because it was like very straight to the point. This is what the USSR was like. It was a political rat race, and it was ugly, and it was messy, and it got bloody.
Got bloody? When I think of all those people in the Gulag, when I think of all the people wrenched out of their homes, out of the arms of their loved ones, people that just disappeared without an explanation, there's been plenty of movies about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I tried to read Solzhenitsyn, and it just was so heavy and lengthy, and it's just hard to, I found it very easy to fall asleep during reading it. I saw another movie where some people way out in Siberia escaped, and they literally walked all the way to India over the Himalayas and that to escape that, and all that they went through in doing that. And it's very hard for me. I wouldn't want to hurt somebody a little bit. Like I wouldn't want to step on your toe.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are these not only killers are one thing, but torturers are another. To take train loads of people and take them way out into Siberia and just dump them off, no food and no medical care, and what just freezing to death, and oh my God, the brutality and barbarity of that. It's hard for me to accept as a human being.
Yeah.
I can hardly believe that it still goes on, but it does. There are ethnic groups all around the world that are suppressed and murdered and genocidally wiped out. And I was born during the Korean conflict, and then I had the Vietnam War to look at, and then all these things, the Middle East, Desert Storm, and I can't believe that it goes on time after time after time. It's just one of these, when do we learn? And we don't learn.
Yeah.
We're still all just a bunch of juvenile jackasses, And look what's in Washington D.C. right now. Where were they raised? What kind of what in society continues to produce that over and over? These damaged people rising to the top of power and just making life miserable for everybody else.
Yeah.
So the movie was a funny movie, and I watched it as a funny movie. I laughed during the movie. In a situation like that, no one is safe.
Yeah.
No one. The guy at the very top may be assassinated, and everybody below him may be. So you're almost better off just being like, you just run a print shop somewhere, I mean, in America right now, the entire population, nobody feels safe.
Yeah.
Everybody's afraid to say the wrong word or go to the wrong thing or even look at the wrong person the wrong way, or any kind of a faux pas would get you in some horrible trouble. We're not supposed to live like that. We're supposed to be happy, friendly people with a good sense of humor, very helpful. That's the better nature of man. So it's good to see a situation like this, a movie like this,
Yeah.
and you realize I like to vilify China and say this is going on in China, but it's going on right here too. It's going on right here.
Yeah.
Look at people who are just swiped. The most smallest thing, like you're swiped off of Facebook. They censored you off. You can't go on Facebook anymore. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Really? They're micromanaging us to that level. Today in my email, I got a thing from Google Maps where they showed me everywhere I went for the past entire month. You made 3 trips here, 2 trips over here. You went to this place. It shows this visit right here. How many times I went here in the last 30 days. What is up with that? What's up with that? How they send me the report. I mean, if you don't think they're recording every word we say and every keystroke of our computer, they are.
I mean, that's what they did in the movie. Like when Khrushchev and Molotov were talking in his bathroom, they flushed the toilet because they were worried that they were going to be bugged. And everyone was on a list. Everyone was terrified of being on one of Barry's lists because it's like for the smallest little thing, you could get thrown into one of the NKVD's holding cells and get tortured and then not come out. Or worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You come out dead.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
For me, I really enjoyed the film because I thought that it drew a lot of really great natural comedy from the bureaucratic rat race going on in the Central Committee, but it also, did not shy away from showing the seriousness, the sort of the suffering that goes on from those rat races. But it seems like maybe from what I've been hearing from you, you thought maybe it wasn't as balanced as good, that maybe it sort of glossed over that suffering that really, went on during that time.
I think it's just a difference of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the environment that you watch the movie in has something to do with it.
Yeah.
So maybe I had an attitude at the time, and maybe you did, right? You're looking for a certain thing maybe, or whatever it may be. Maybe I had just seen something pretty grim before that, so the movie was a little more grim.
Yeah.
Maybe if I had 3 or 4 people with me and I was all happy and we were partying a little bit and stuff, maybe the movie would have been funnier. Mm-hmm. So I understand what you're looking for. And there was some amount of balance of that. I think it's a matter of perspective. I think each individual is going to judge that for themselves.
Mm-hmm. You think this movie is it'll look different, like based on who's watching it?
Definitely. I think that the many horrible things I've seen in life made me focus on that. I'm really not happy with entire genocidal regimes. I'm very, very unhappy with the incursion of communism into the United States now. I know it doesn't end well. Mm-hmm. So this should be a warning to people. And it's hard for me to break away from that because I watch politics. I'm kind of a political junkie.
Yeah.
And I see horrible things happening every day here, witch hunts and stuff like that. And I'm not happy about it. It shouldn't be.
I really enjoyed the movie, and I suggested it because personally I think it's a really, for I think a comedy that is historical and also balances like some serious topics, I think this is a must-watch. Do you think that this is a must-watch?
No, I don't think it's a must-watch. Mm-hmm. But I would like to see people, this is one of those situations where I want to see the comment section. Mm-hmm. I would love it for the people who do watch this to go in a comment section, and because you felt it was so well balanced and everything, I'd like to know if people were really happy with it, or if they were outraged by it, or they thought it was genius, or they thought it was stupid. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see that. I might have watched this movie spontaneously. I fall asleep in front of the TV every night. It takes me like 3-4 nights to get through a movie.
I suggested this movie because I thought it was a really good balance. It derived great natural humor from a real historical event while also not glazing over the seriousness of what went on during this time. And for me, I think that's a must watch. And I was going to ask, like, do you not think this is a must watch?
I didn't think it was a must watch, but I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to. You know, I think this was a good suggestion.
I think for me, I think for other people as well, I think this is a must watch. I think when it comes to, like I had the problem with The Road to Wellville in our last one, and where I felt that, it's real historical event. There are serious things going on in this film. And I felt like there was a lot of things that the audience was robbed from because there wasn't enough of a focus on that. And in this one, I felt like it was a really balanced focus. And I felt like if you want to have a good, comedy, historical one with serious topics, this is what you should watch.
I certainly concede.
Yeah.
I certainly concede. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I agree that it wasn't amazing. It wasn't like the greatest film of all time, but I think it's definitely a necessary one to watch. I think when it comes to seeing how humor can be driven out of a natural historical event, as well as balancing, the seriousness with it. And some acting performances are really good, really capturing the characters of these historical figures. I think it's a must-see watch. And it's got its flaws here and there, but I think for me, it's an 8 out of 10.
Okay, well, that's a good rating. Yeah. I appreciate that you liked it that much. And I will go with a 6.
Okay, good.
So...
Thank you for watching The Real Generation Gap. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Did you think The Death of Stalin was a balanced comedy where it, both the seriousness and the comedy of it was well done, or do you think that it completely missed the mark? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you.